Hi, everybody. Welcome to Pivot with Kindness, episode 2. And for those of you that watched episode 1, we would love to know what you thought. So today we thought we would concentrate on loosely, but sort of honoring your needs, because we find it's something that yeah, as working mums, it's a little bit tricky. So I'm founder of Kindness for Success. If you hadn't watched the first one, I've got a coaching business, and it's very much around extending ourselves kindness the same way we do to others. And I am joined today with the creator of Pivot with Petra. How are you doing today, Petra?
I'm doing well. It's spring over here in Ottawa, so the sun is shining. We see a little bit of grass when we walk outside. The snow is pretty much almost melted. So I'm really excited about the transition, not only on the outside, but also on the inside. I'm feeling pretty good. How about you?
Ah, that's great. And I like how you talk about almost it's sort of that. Yeah, sometimes with spring and new beginnings, it's sort of like, oh, well, we're talking about, perhaps new beginnings for some of our listeners. And yeah, I'm well. As you know, I was not very well between our first recording and this. And actually we'll come to it, won't we, in terms of it was a bit of a learning for myself and what I needed. So as I said, we're going to talk about honoring our own needs. That's sort of our focus today. And we know that it's something that with our clients, typically we find it challenging. So, what are your thoughts on this topic, Petra? It'd be great to hear.
Yes, honoring your needs. This is something that, for me, to be very honest, it's something I find a bit foreign because I don't really think about it as much. I have come to learn about it and think about it more now, but when I became a mom, this was not something that was part of my vocabulary because
Mm,
I always kind of automatically thought about needs of other people, my family in particular. My When I first became a mom, it was all about the baby.
yeah,
So
yeah.
to ask me about my needs, this is something that I really never thought about. I always kind of came last, and that kind of went on for quite a while.
Mhm.
Um, and so even when I felt like I needed something for me, I felt guilty about it. I felt very guilty about, for example, taking a walk or getting like going outside before everything else is perfect, So I needed to clear the dishes, to clear the toys, to make sure everyone else is doing well before I can think about my needs. So for me, really, I'm on a journey to discover what my needs are and to
Mm,
honor my own needs. It's something that I
mm.
have kind of worked on for the last 5 years, and I'm still learning, but I'm in a much, much better place right now.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
well
What
done.
about
And
for you?
yeah, so I think, and I was going to say, it's I always think it's important, isn't it, to highlight that actually it is an ongoing, it is a journey, isn't it? It's not something like, oh, okay, I know how to honor my needs, XYZ, and I just do it, all of the time, day in, day out. But I guess similar to you, Petra, I guess, but before sort of a year or so ago, when I set up Kindness to Success, know, I probably wouldn't have even really given it much thought. And I think even if I think about, before being a mum, I probably just, I was seeing to my needs without really realizing almost what a gift, that was. It sounds, sounds a bit trite, but I guess what I mean is, that sort of, I guess the freedom, I had with my own needs. And as with you, when I first became a mum 9 years ago, my needs sort of went out the window essentially. And as I say, I'm sat here now almost a year to the day of Kindness to Success. And for me, I guess, it's not as simple as one thing, but if I had to boil it down to one thing, is extending ourselves kindness the same way we do to others, and not leaving it for when there's time, because let's face it, there never is. So I guess and you sort of spoke to it a little bit, but what specifically, Petra, so far has your alignment journey taught you about honoring your needs?
Well, first of all, alignment is my word for this year. And the essence of Pivot with Petra is really about creating alignment between uh, your work, uh, your family, and also yourself. So I have like three pillars over there. So one is personal fulfillment, another one is success at work, however you define it, and another one is success at home. And when I think about my alignment journey, which I started about 5 years ago, um, as I said before, I wasn't really prioritizing myself or thinking about my needs, but I started to think about it a little bit more, because the more I was ignoring myself, the more I was driving myself closer and closer to burning out. And burnout is real, especially when you're oversubscribed from work demands, from personal expectations, societal expectations, work demands. And so the first thing that I have learned is to name your needs. And that means that at any given moment, it's important to think about, what are my needs right now? you know um for example, there are times that I feel really tired being inside for the longest time, and I just need to step outside for a walk, and I just respect that and go. So naming your needs is important. And the second thing I would say is prioritizing your needs. So for example, I may be working and then like I'm eating at my desk all week because of course there's another email, there's another this, there's another that. And instead of actually sitting at my desk and eating at my desk, one way of honoring my needs is to actually take an actual lunch break, get away
Mm,
from my desk, sit
mm,
down, enjoy my meal. And I have also planned that every lunch hour, I try to go like for 15 minutes or so, just like for fresh air outside.
yeah, yeah,
And being able to do that is also an act of like self-respect, because being like, if you say to yourself, okay, I'll have a proper lunch, all right, these are my needs, you've named them already, and you promise yourself that you will do it, and you don't do it.
mm,
To me,
mm,
actually, I think I may sound a little bit brutal, but I think it is an act of self disrespect. And the question that I ask myself when I'm about to dishonor my own needs is, am I respecting myself enough to
mm,
actually get up and do it? And so for
mm,
me, that's really what I have learned so far. There's so many other lessons that we cannot cover in these like few minutes that we're together
mm,
today, but
mm,
honestly, just realizing that your needs are important, they matter, naming what they are at any given time because they evolve, they change,
yes,
and really actually being accountable to yourself and doing it, as an act of self-respect. I think that's what
yes.
some of the lessons that I have learned. What about you, like from kindness perspective, from your own journey? What have you learned?
Yeah, yeah. And I guess so much richness in there. And I love that, the thought of, that respect piece, and actually, yeah, almost turning it on its head when, if you're thinking of not being like, hang on, am I disrespecting myself? I think also what you talked about, what do I need now? Is I think a really pertinent one to ask as well. So yes, so I mean, I guess, a lot. So I think, as you say, our needs matter. And I think you'll you saw that I did a LinkedIn Live with Gifty Enright, author, speaker, and coach, and with the fabulously named book. I've got it here, Octopus on a Treadmill. So working mums, that's a good read. And I think, you know, what we were talking about at the outset, and us both saying that actually when we became moms, our needs went to, sort of fell down the pecking order. For me, she sort of really brought this to life when she shared, I can't remember the exact quote, but as women, we're conditioned to play small and to be the nurturing ones. And I think the danger is that we can easily fall into that stereotype. And for anyone listening, or afterwards, think about, what time do you sit down in an evening? Do you sit down? So, you finish work, you've maybe picked the kids up, you've made the tea, you've cleared up from tea, you've done bath, you've done the stories, you've done the bed. You then, if you've not eaten with the kids, you're cooking again, you're putting the laundry away, you're catching up on the 3 billion WhatsApp messages that have come through. You're sorting out the school bags in the morning, you're going to call your friend that's had a hard time, and always putting others first. Um, and I think, there's a real danger in that, um, of always playing small and always putting others first. Um, yeah, like you say, our needs matter.
Absolutely. And actually, as you were speaking and you asked, like, have you sat down? When do you sit down? You remind me of a book that I read in my early motherhood journey by Tiffany Dufu. It's called Drop the Ball. I think that's the title.
Okay, I'm gonna write that down.
Um, so Tiffany shared a lot of really good nuggets about, you know, I think it's something that will be useful for working moms or moms to be, or anybody who is in,
Mm,
in
mm,
the motherhood journey, because the book talks exactly about that. Like there was, I think, an illustration of how Tiffany wasn't really sitting down even for a moment in one of the chapters. It's just like she was like, go, 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 go. And I loved one of the kind of comparison that was in that book where they talked about how men do a little bit of a better job when
mm.
it comes to honoring their needs, right? Like, I don't know how many times I've seen my husband coming home and just crashing for a little nap
Yeah.
before, you know what I mean? Like before coming to the kitchen or before moving on with other things. And I'm going to confess, sometimes I used to be a little bit resentful about it because I'll be like, how do you nap? Meanwhile, you know,
Be like,
there's
look at
one,
all of
two,
the other
three,
million and
four,
things you
five,
could be
six,
doing.
seven, there's laundry, there's this, there's that. But what actually that taught me is that I would say, like, maybe, I don't know if it's stereotypical to say that men do a better job than women, but I think that's what I have seen in
Mm,
my environment. I see
mm.
that, um, yeah, like the example of men being able to nap even if the dishes are dirty
Yeah,
is something that I had to kind of like unlearn,
yeah.
like what I think is important, and then like see
Mm,
how I can actually leverage that type of habit and build my own. So yeah, I
mm,
highly recommend Drop the Ball by
mm.
Tiffany. It sets a lot of really good examples about setting proper partnerships if you have a partner, and
Yes.
other really good elements that are important for our motherhood journey. And
Yeah.
as it relates to what we're talking about today about
Mm.
honoring our own needs, I think that it's super important. And I also want to like kind of like branch off into like some practical stuff, because
Yeah.
whenever I have had people um, talking about coaching or mentoring, they talk about what? and it's kind of like, oh, you need to do this, you need to stop doing that, you need to, you know what I mean? But it's that type of language is very inaccessible because it doesn't really show you how. And that's what I'm aiming to do with
Mm,
my new passion project, Pivot with
mm,
Petra. I want to
mm,
be able to relate to kind of like help you relate to what it is, because this is my own journey and my own story in terms of like
mm,
my own transformation journey, but also to actually talk about how do you do it, how does it look like. So
mm.
I would like to invite you to share a few practical examples or like tips about, a mom, like a real life working mom like you. What are some of the things that you have done in your life that kind of exemplify honoring your own needs? Let's get a little bit
Yeah.
real with this.
Yeah, no, thank you for, and it's a great question. And I think it is that sometimes we can, listen to things, can't we, or read things and we think like, yeah, yeah, okay, I get it. And but what's the answer? Now, spoiler alert, there is no answer or magic bullet, so to speak. If Petra or I find it, we will share and then we'll be billionaires. And you can be like, I saw that on Pivot with Kindness episode 2. um, but for the here and now, there are things, and I guess what I wanted to share, and I thought I would challenge, no, challenge sounds too difficult word, invite our listeners to a sort of 4-step exercise that they could potentially try out between now and our next pivot with kindness. And it's something that's sometimes my clients, if they're really struggling to think about what they need, and as Petra, you so beautifully talk about it, that alignment between you, family and work. I talk about, having, rather than having it all, having your all. So for the people really struggling, as I said, there's sort of 4 steps. And the first step is go back to basics. And I invite you to set some time aside. It might just be 10 minutes. If you can't even make 10 minutes, 5 minutes, if that's all you have, and grab a notepad or your phone, ideally a notepad, because there's something, about our brain and our hands sort of connection, and make a list of all of the things that make you feel happy, fulfilled, energized, that make you feel you. It may be things that you've not done for years. I don't know, painting or skipping or but it might be things that you have always wanted to try, like, oh, I've had that cross stitch thing someone bought me, a million years ago, but it's never been a priority. So that first is put some time aside. And the second is invite you to go back to that list 24 to 48 hours later. What you'll find, those things, even if you haven't been consciously thinking about it, will have been sort of percolating. And of those, which have remained with you. And what identify one thing, I would suggest just one to begin with, could you commit to doing for yourself from now? Now, it might be committing to an exercise class a week. It could be that you're going to catch up with a friend in person every 2 weeks. It could be experimenting with coming in and sitting on the sofa instead of getting all of the jobs, even if it's one evening a week. Or it could be something like writing yourself a positive affirmation at the end of each day or at the start of each day. So you've got your list, you've gone back and you've chosen your one thing. Step 3 is ask yourself what might get in the way. The more, as you know, the more, Petra, we can, preempt, and I'm sure you see it with your clients as well, the more we preempt challenges, roadblocks, obstacles, the more we can overcome them or plan for them. So have a think. If it helps, note those things down as well. And then the fourth, and is linked to 2.3, is around accountability. So who are you going to communicate this one thing to? Now, we know that if we tell ourselves something, I think we're like 10% likely to do it. If we write it down, that increases to 20% or something. And then I'll need to find the stats for next time. But when we share with something, a commitment that we're going to do, I think it's something like that, the likelihood of it happening goes to 85%. So that's the 4 steps. So make a list, all the things that make you feel happy, fulfilled, energized. Go back to it 24 to 48 hours later and choose one thing you're going to commit to, ask what might get in the way, and communicate with someone. What would you do, or what would you add, um, Petra? You know,
I was writing down when you were talking about the process, kind of like a little framework of actually what I wrote, making it happen.
yeah.
So I like how you break it down by, okay, you think about it. And I think most of the working moms already know, when things aren't, going well, or things are very misaligned, we all kind of can feel it, right? So you already know. And then you think that, you know what, I'm going to be running, or I'm going to do this for myself. So I like that the idea is actually to write it down as a second step. And then I love the other piece that you mentioned about telling it to someone, because then that makes it more real. And it's kind of like you are creating an accountability partner for yourself. And I think that I didn't know if there was any science behind it, but now that you are saying actually it works, I'm revisiting some of the things that I did at the beginning of the year. So one of it was I thought that I needed to move more, and because I wasn't really moving as much as I wanted, I told my neighbor, who is also
Mm,
a friend of mine, and we decided that we're gonna be communicating about how we have achieved that goal every night.
yeah.
So every night before I go to bed, I just text her, "Hey V, 500, 5,000 K today," or "Today I was slacking, something happened," or whatever. Like, so I'll be honest. I'll tell her if it happened or not.
Mm,
So I
mm,
love that, and I think it really works because
mm,
you're so accustomed to disappointing yourself and disrespecting yourself. And so the minute you've actually manifested it out there, it's kind of like there's an accountability piece to it,
yes.
and you're going to, like, more likely kind of be inspired
Yeah.
to do it. So I
Yeah.
love that. My tips around like how to do it in a practical way,
Yeah.
I actually have nailed it down in a little kind of framework that's called SASA, SASA, and that's a
Love
Swahili
it.
word for now. So,
Wow.
and I'll tell you what SASA means. So, SASA, the first step is schedule. Schedule it. The reason why scheduling is important, it's because we already schedule everything for our work, right? Like,
Mm,
you schedule the meetings, you schedule like everything else. And what's funny is that our own life, our own personal life, does not get anywhere near our calendar. And then we wonder, why is it not happening? So I'll give you like a vivid example. So for the longest time, we used to just be wishy-washy about playing with our kids, but we started to schedule it. So it's part of our calendar. We know at this day and this time we are playing games. So we bring the Uno out, snakes and ladder. I love it when we play Scrabble, categories. We have a lot of those, and so we just line it up. And because it's scheduled and everyone knows about it, like it actually happens.
mm,
And when it
mm,
doesn't, you can, like, maybe you can have an excuse for it, but it's part of the calendar. It's literally the same thing as scheduling a meeting with your CEO of your
mm,
organization,
mm. That's when it's
scheduling
happening.
a
Yeah.
dental
And everyone
appointment
knows.
that you're paying for, so you will respect it. So the second letter, which is A, is ask for help. And this is a big one because it's not everything that you need to be doing at work or at home. You need to be able to delegate, for example, at work. At home, you need to be able to ask for help. And the one way that I have been asking for help at home is by involving my kids in doing all the home affairs together. It's not everything that they can participate, but there are some things that they participate. And I have trained them when they come home to ask, what can I do to help? So anytime I'm standing in the kitchen chopping tomatoes and my son is over there trying to open his Nintendo, he would pause because, of course, I give him a little bit of the mommy eye. And then he'll be like, is there anything that I could help with? And I'll say, yes, get the carrot from the fridge and start peeling. I started when they were really young. So I remember when I started, there were times that they'll be like, it's too hard to hold the knife. And I'll be like, yeah, yeah, get the peeler. Just like, even if they spend 1 hour peeling one carrot, at least they're standing right there in the kitchen with
Yeah.
you and they're helping you. And it's actually, it's a reciprocal effect because you're helping them to also grow those skills that they will
Yes,
need in
yes,
the future.
exactly.
But at
The
the same
skills that they
time,
don't
they're helping.
necessarily learn.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. So, and then one other thing that I ask for help is that I asked my son to make me a cup of French vanilla every Friday morning and bring it upstairs. So I don't wake up. I just sit there. I'll be like reading, doing something. Of course, he's 9. I'm not going to ask you to do it for your 2-year-old, but he kind of like feels really good doing it for me. And in the past, this is something that I wasn't comfortable doing because I just felt like I needed to do everything for everyone else. So that's the A part. The third letter, which is also an S, is simplify. Simplify, simplify, simplify. The reason why we don't take care of our needs is because we think that the pile is too big already. You
Mm,
have laundry, you have this, you
mm,
have that, you have your work, you know what I mean? So I think breaking it down to smaller, nuggets
mm,
that you
mm,
can chew on makes
mm.
it easier for you to implement. So how I have simplified it for me is that like I've looked at my day and I've looked at how busy it is, and then there are some little spots in between that I can insert my own needs. And I have actually broken it down to just like 15 minutes, or 10 minutes of this. And it just changes my life. And here's something that I think I have done to simplify my night routine. Instead of just like going to bed scrolling on my phone, I have simplified my night routine by just putting the phone away altogether. It's so simple. Put the phone away, then have your night routine where you can read if you want to. Sometimes I actually just go to the bathroom, stand in front of the mirror, and stretch after a long day. I just do movements. And in 2 minutes, I feel much better. So I think the key is to really do simple stuff
Mm,
and do it
mm,
every day. That
mm,
way, you're going to be honoring your needs in a continuous way, using
mm,
those like tiny little elements of movement
mm.
that would create a greater, like, I think you're going to have like a greater impact than waiting for everything else to clear out so that you can have your vacation me time, which is not
Yes,
going to happen,
yes. And
you
then you've been
know?
going so long, actually, often you get to it and you're poorly. So I love it. So
Yeah.
schedule it, ask for
Yeah.
help,
So,
simplify, and what is the
so the
final
last
A?
one is an A, is adapt. So
Okay.
Sasa, schedule, ask for help, simplify, and adapt. So adapt, it means that we know things happen. We need to
Mm,
evolve. The
mm,
seasons change, the
mm.
needs change of your family, of yourself, of your work. So I think it's really important to not be like we're set in stone. This is my needs and this is how I'm going to
Yes,
honor them. Also to adapt.
yes.
And the fact that sasa means now in Swahili, which is my mother tongue, it's
Love it.
it's hitting home for me. So if you ever remember for anything that you're gonna remember from this conversation, if you forget everything, just remember Sasa, which means
Mm,
is now. And now
mm.
is when you need to begin that journey to honor yourself. Schedule it, ask for help, simplify, and adapt.
Do you know, oh my goodness, I love that. And also I'm like, yes, I need to my like four-step model. I'm like, I'm gonna bring some simplification to it. So thank you for sharing that. And I think, do you know what? And I know we talked about keeping this slightly shorter this episode because again we know our listeners actually, maybe it could be then like, oh, in my like pockets of time, my pockets of me, I can jump on and listen with pivot with kindness with Petra and Kim. So I think, as we bring, I guess, to a close, when we honor our own needs, it has a profound impact and not just us on everyone else. And actually a I think it was Marshall Goldsmith, so obviously super big player in the coaching world, that it was with a group of a room of coaches, and he asked who feels comfortable sort of selling their services, and everyone was like, oh no, and then he talked about, well, actually, if you're not doing that, then how can you support others because they don't know that you're there. And it's a slightly different analogy, but it's almost actually honoring your needs, that self-kindness. It begins, with you. And if you're finding it hard to do for yourself, almost like Marshall Goldsmith did like reverse it. So actually, if you're really struggling to initially honor your needs, think about it as though actually by doing so, you're enabling yourself to show up for your family, whatever, in the way they deserve and the way you want to. So I'm wondering if you've got any closing words or thoughts, Petra.
I think in closing, I will say that you may be at a point in your own journey where you feel like thinking about your needs is almost impossible. And I would like to encourage you that you're not alone. It's quite normal, especially if you're a working mom who is stretched super thin. Um, I encourage you to take the time to start very, very small, because it is that first step that's gonna
Mm,
determine, your
mm,
transformation. And if you
mm,
ever like need to chat, or you need to like have another, alignment partner or kindness partner on your corner, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I go by Petronilla Michael, or you can reach out to my friend over here, Kim, just to chat. This is not like a
mm. No.
sales pitch. It's really about chatting about it. Like, what is it that you're going through? How can you be able to identify your needs, and how can we kind of support?
Yeah.
Because the whole idea really is to support working mothers, because I strongly believe that when the mom is on fire, everything else falls apart. So, be you, do you, and take the time to respect yourself, because honoring yourself is an act of self-respect. And I'll leave you with a question. Are you willing to respect yourself enough to follow through your own needs? Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in. We will see you next month. And if there are any particular topics you would like to hear about Pivot with Petra, with myself, I was looking at your background, Pivot with Kindness, with Petra, Michael, or myself, Kim Stokes, Kindness for Success, then let us know. And in the meantime, go honor your needs. Bye.
Bye.